Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar. It's great to have you all here. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about how to avoid some common mistakes when migrating operating systems. My name's Jack. I'm the head of sales here at Storeganise. I've had the chance to work with literally hundreds of self-storage operators since joining this wonderful industry, and helping them, find modern, often alternative, practical and technical solutions to running their business. A big question mark and hurdle that for operators is how to make the migration process as pain-free as possible. And today we are joined by Sebastian and Laura to dive into some of the key mistakes to avoid when preparing, planning, testing, and project managing a successful change for the future. So again, I'm joined by Sebastian. Sebastian is an automations expert with a consultancy, Caribou. He's worked with 50 plus self-storage businesses to help them make the best technology decisions possible. He's got that rare combination of kind of strategic industry knowledge as well as a deep technical experience coming from a software developer background and building custom add-ons for operators. And it's always a pleasure to hear operators that I refer to him for a consultancy hear such positive things to help them make the right choices and the best choices for their situation. And we're also joined by Laura. Laura's from Sensorberg, who leads up the sales and marketing efforts there in the Berlin-based access control provider. And it really feels like Sensorberg at the moment is kind of a rising star in Europe, one of Europe's top players in the field. And I'm hearing more and more of them come up in conversations when I'm speaking to operators looking for remote access solutions, in particular access. So her point of view from a hardware and integration perspective is going to help us bring that side of the that part of the argument or that part of the consideration process into migrating not just operating software, but all the integrations that you have in place as well, right? Before I dive in, I'm just going to a quick housekeeping, but just before the call. So it's very hot here, so I'm sweating because I'm in Spain and it's about 32 degrees outside. So a bit of housekeeping. This is being recorded. We have enabled the Q&A. So I'm just going to skip to a quick slide which I made. So in the Q&A section at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you'll see these dots, and then if you click on those dots, you should be able to click on Q&A, and then you can post your questions with us in the Q&A. And I was on a webinar relatively recently, and we didn't really have much time at the end of the call for Q&A. So please feel free to leave questions in there, and we'll try to bring them up as we're going through these 5 areas that we're discussing today. So up on my screen now are the 5 sort of costly mistakes. Mistakes is a bit of a loaded word. These are kind of things to avoid, let's say, when you're going through and considering a migration process. Now, you could just, I guess, just leave the webinar now, take the screenshot of these, but obviously you'll be missing quite a lot of the context and a lot of the experience that Sebastian and Laura and myself are going to be bringing to add a little bit more context to a lot of these situations, and also real life examples as well. So, before I do jump into, we're going to jump in. We've got about 5 or 10 minutes on each area. Before I go into each of one of these, I just wanted to zoom out slightly and sort of provide a little bit of context from the industry itself. This is a report that I took from the Inside Self-Storage in 2024. 92% of self-storage owners, operators believe new tech will make their business more competitive, and 98% of those either have or want remote access capabilities. Yet, despite a lot of this momentum for change and adoption, only a third have not yet implemented any remote access control or access management tools. So I think, you know, it's important to consider that pretty much the whole industry is looking for modern ways to help automate and manage their operations. This study is from the US, but I think we can always look over to the US since it's such a mature market. We can sort of see, you know, that the trends happening in the US are obviously going to be, you know, what's the word? Reverberated around the world, right? Also in that study, it's worth noting as well that some of the key barriers that were cited to sort of starting a migration were around cost. So, you know, not just about how much it costs potentially in moving to a new system, but also the cost on time as well it might take, and how does that impact your business. But also training staff was a big barrier for a lot of operators looking to migrate. How do they educate all of their staff on a new system? And then also a bit of education around cloud services in general, in particular around some operators that might be in rural areas and not maybe understand how connectivity would work in rural areas compared to urban areas, for example. There was another sort of potential barrier there, which was around change resistance. So this is more around, you know, no one likes change. And if you have a group of people or individuals that have a lot of influence in an organization and they're very resistant to change, then how do you help with that process of bringing everyone on board and getting that buy-in in order to migrate to a new system? Okay. So hopefully between the three of us, we can go through these 5 topics here. I'll stop sharing my screen and I will start we can go straight into one of those areas now. The first area about why are we migrating? Laura, I'll start with you because I think from your perspective, from an access control and integration sort of perspective, what advice would you give operators that are looking to define whether to migrate or not?
Yeah. So basically, when we talk first to customers and they want to start either a new business or they're already operating, so the first question we always ask when we have the first conversation with them is why they want to change. So either they're going to change from one system to another or start from scratch. So actually, why? So for us, it's super important to have like clear goals for the operator itself, and the operator should have measurable outcomes right from the start, because without any clear goals in the end on metrics, you cannot measure the success, basically. So from a smart access point of view, I would say it's important to understand from an access point how the access control actually fits also to the bigger goal of the company and to the vision of the company, I would say as well. So how does the access control support the success also of the gate? How does the gate look like? Why do you actually want to change? What is it that you currently have given? How does the customer journey look like? I think that's very important. Are your customers happy with the system you're currently working with? What is it you want to improve? I think that's very important. What are you missing right now? What do you want to have in the future? So you have like a clear list of all of these goals you want to reach eventually. So why is it important you want to improve? There are some key metrics such as, is it reliability, for example? Some people are unhappy with the reliability of the access control. Is it that? Or do you want to have a better user interface for the customer during the booking process? I mean, when we talk about the integration also with the access control, but also with the software piece, how does the customer journey look like right now? And how should it look like in the future? Do you want to offer extended hours, for example? Do you want to have an easier operation for the staff on site? Do you maybe want to go completely unmanned? I mean, that's also a trend that's going on, having an unmanned facility. So additionally, also access sharing is like highly requested. Do you want to have that? So really think about the why, set up SMART goals. I think that's also very important. What we have seen also recently is that some people want to change from one system to another because they want to additionally add some upselling opportunities such as drop shipping, DHL, pickup, delivery stuff. So these are important things. We also always talk to them in the first conversation we have. Security aspect is also a major thing. If you completely, for example, if you work with padlocks right now and you want to change not only the outer shell, but also like retrofit the existing units, because currently you just work with padlocks, digital access control can give you benefits here, but of course you need to think about it. Do I need that? Do I need that for my customers? What kind of customers you currently have? What kind of customers you want to have in the future? I think that's also important you need to think about. So as I said, it's important to set up clear and measurable goals. So in the end, you can better track that. So for example, you want to have better automation, and it means that as a SMART goal, all paying tenants should get access 30 seconds after payment, or they should only get access on the day they move in. So you need to be concrete on these goals. What do you want to achieve, and how does it actually contribute to your overall business goal, I would say. So these are things we're always asking the operators in our first conversations. So, and also I think what's important, I mean, digitalization is a trend, yes, but know your customer. If you have, for example, right now a customer segment that you also, of course, want to expand, you want to attract more customers in the future, different customer segments, think about it. What is needed for that? What do you currently have, and why you want to change the system? Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Sebastian?
Very, very important. And
thanks,
sometimes
Laura.
people don't think about it. They just jump in a call with us, and then they don't have like clear vision how it should look like within 1 year, for example.
Yeah, it's a long process to do the change, and it really has to be worth it. So Laura has named a few very good points. I also have to say these transitions typically come naturally. So if you're an operator wondering is now the right time, what I found, 8 or 9 out of 10 operators find themselves in one of two situations. Either they plan for growth, they want to scale up and see, they don't want to scale the mess they have already, or they know I can't have this times 10, right? Yeah. So that's one thing I'm seeing. So naturally you want to automate more. And the other aspect is a bit like the frog in boiling water, right? You haven't done anything for a few years, and you suddenly find yourself just like Jack in his room. It's hot. What's wrong here, right? And example from Germany, actually, there's one operator like this, big operator, no innovation for many years. It's also a large organization, right? So it's not like they casually do it, but suddenly they find themselves with competitors around having automated, right? They have all these, they have smart locks, they have these booking portals, they have all the bells and whistles, and these guys still just have a plain website and people need to call them for prices, which is good too, if people can call you, and they should be able to call you, but you see, you have to up your game when it comes to automation. So these are like two indicators I see in the market where automation comes naturally. Yeah.
And also, it's not always a case that some people might think that they want to migrate, but it might just be the case that after an evaluation process as to sort of defining your why you want to do that, that you may think, actually, do you know what, I'm going to wait 6 months, 2 years for other things to develop around me, because it might not be the right time for you today, right? And that's also okay. And I think that's an important part of this phase, is when you're defining the reasons that you want to migrate, that it might not always be best for you.
Yeah.
Number 2, this next kind of challenge to avoid, or the next thing to avoid when you're looking to do a migration, is about poor planning, around planning in general, right? Sebastian, what are you seeing when you're consulting at this stage of the migration?
Yeah, as to say, generally the approach to migration is very casual in the industry. It's like, what do I like? And okay, let's just go for it, which more often than not ends up in disasters of different proportions, right? You just go for something, hope for the best, and if it doesn't work out, I sometimes see operators just reverting back to the model they had before. You know, well, in Germany we would say you've burnt your fingers, so to say, right? You've made a misjudgment once, and now you're fed up with the whole migration stuff, and you let it be for a while. That's why I think it's great to go to trade shows. It's great to meet, take demos, learn as much as you can about the product you want to migrate to, but then do a test, right? It can be as simple as with Storeganise, it's possible to get a test system, just book it and do the move-ins, move-outs, and the more thoroughly you test it, the more you found out. And as you know, the devil's in the details. Yeah, so that's one thing, like test thoroughly, and then create a plan, right? You have the chance to spend 50 hours now on your own time. 50 hours is not nothing, but you could invest the time now on your own clock. That's the point, right? You determine the pacing, or you can do 150 hours later when you've already migrated, your customers are upset, things are not working, and that's the less pleasant approach. So it's not often seen, planning. It can be as easy like, just phase it out, start with small tests, introduce more and more aspects of the full system, and try to get as close to the full system as you can. And then you're already off to a good start.
Yeah, I can totally agree. So it's all is about planning. And I would also say not only planning, it's also ownership. So from an access point perspective, there's so many different stakeholders involved. I think that's sometimes very missed when we have first conversation with people. They don't know who else is involved. So there's so many different stakeholders involved, such as like the software management system and Storeganise, box builder, petitioning. You have sometimes even general contractor who are involved, electrician, IT network company on site, additional installation companies. You have so many people who are involved in the whole process. So you have to have a clear owner who's responsible of the whole planning. You need to coordinate everything. I think that's sometimes very much missed, I would say. And ask also right from the beginning, ask the right question, like how, if you talk about the migration, understand how the current system is working, what is given, what needs to be changed, how is the current, the new system is working if you want to migrate, what is the naming, for example, how are the units labeled in the system. I think that's very important. Clear up old stuff like zombie users, zombie accounts, match, especially for access control, match external identifiers, because all the system have different names for the unit codes. So I think that's also very important. So what I sometimes see is people, especially within the teams or the different departments, because also in the company, different departments are involved, not only different stakeholders, but also within the team, different departments are involved. And sometimes people just don't talk to each other. So just right from the beginning, talk to each other, set up a clear planning, milestones, tasks, what is involved, to which people you need to talk to, who is the owner, who takes care of different things. So yeah, I think that's super important. And especially from access control perspective, sometimes they just believe it's like a plug and play and it just works. But that's, I mean, it's super complex. It's not that easy. I mean, for access control, you have the installation, you have the partitioning, when does the additional log come inside the box, who is all involved. So different things are involved, especially also like billing, tenant permissions, move-ins, outs, and also the operational workflow. So I think you should, as I already said, have a list, not only why do you want to change, but how to change, what are the tasks involved, to who do you need to speak to, set up check-ins as well, external, internal. So I think these things are very, very important.
So then you've defined your why, and assuming your why is yes, we need to migrate for X, Y, Z, then the plan also needs to include a potential rollout with maybe a few different partners, yeah. Right? So in your experience, who, if I'm an operator, who would be the right person internally that could do that, or team, or or is there success? Is the success of a migration increased by bringing in a third party who's like, maybe a consultancy, or, because I remember we did an RFP for a large operator, and it was an Excel spreadsheet of maybe 1,500 lines, technical, that we had to reply, in various different formats, whether we had it custom built, whether it was native to the platform, and so, I mean, that's one extreme, but that was an external agency that they had acquired to do that for them and then provide their results. Just wondering whether you've had experience.
Yeah, it really depends. It depends as well how big the team is, because sometimes operators they don't have such huge teams. So it really depends. For example, last year we had a customer, they wanted to go with us, but in the end, they didn't go with us because they find it very complex. They didn't have the right ownership of the different things to do. And in the end, they hired actually a person for that. So they had like I think it was head of visualization or something. So this person was in the end in charge of all the different components. But it really depends how big the team is. I think it just is important that you have such a person who's taking the ownership. Of course, for example, with us, we always support. So we have a project management team who's always like supporting. They also have like a planning, a roadmap and everything, all the milestones. So they also, because it's important, they combine or trying to involve as many stakeholders as possible also in such a kickoff meetings. But I think it really depends.
Sebastian, you're probably biased here, right? On who they should use your services primarily.
Yes, please, everyone. info@caribou.com. No, I think it's different for different sized operators. There are definitely operators out of my league, right, which have so many sites. I see like that's even if I wanted to, I couldn't help them just because every site brings their own details you have to consider, and once you get beyond a certain number, you really have to put aside some time, and sometimes it's the best thing to have someone internally if you have a large enough organization. If you're a small organization, I'm clearly I do this for a period of time just for the transition. It can be the owner itself. Like typically you have a head of operations, someone in your organization, but the important thing I think that Laura said here is give them time, right? Like they need to have the 10 hours per week dedicated to this transition, or maybe it's 20 hours per week, depending on your pace, but it's just, you can't just do it on the side, right? It takes time and you need a person for that.
Yeah, and I think timing is also very important because I can only speak from an access point perspective, but what we see quite recently as well is that people forget about access and then they talk to different stakeholders and then access is just coming right in the end. And my advice for sure, bring in as many stakeholders right from the beginning, because then they can also talk to each other and see how the system will work. So that's also very important.
Yeah, and integrations in general, right? Payments, if there's e-invoicing in a European country or other countries that require some other e-invoicing connection for legal purposes, that's also another consideration as part of the planning. Yeah, and we're seeing more and more of that in Europe, actually. The third mistake that we had on the list was around don't believe the hype. So this is around kind of making maybe assumptions about a particular software or a service or platform that you're about to use without, and this is kind of linked to the fourth one as well, which is around testing, because I think this will kind of lead us into that quite nicely. But I guess, also from your perspective, like what can we do to help? The last thing you want to do as an operator is to sign up to something and then realize that it doesn't do what I thought it does, or it hasn't got the functionality that in my head I thought it had, right? So how do we avoid that?
Yeah, so I think this one is also very much aligning to the why behind it, because if you define the why first, you can set up the reasons behind it, and then you, of course, reach out to the different stakeholders. Because what I see that, of course, digitalization is becoming a trend more and more. Everybody's saying you need to go digital. Digital is the future. But really ask yourself, do I need that? Why do I need that? So don't trust the hype there. So really ask yourself, do I need that? And why do I need that? Does it really actually bring benefit to my business or not? And when you at one point decide, yes, I want to change, my advice always double check everything that everyone is saying. I think that's super important. What we always offer to our people we talk to, prospects we talk to, we always offer on-site visits. I think that's a big thing to do. So really go on site, talk to the operators on site, ask them as well, for example, Sensorberg, Storeganise, ask them what software they're using, what access control they're using, how does it work like, what is the experience, do they have any challenges of migration, do they have any challenge with the customers, with the main gates, and so on and so on. So you should definitely ask those questions, ask for data as well, ask for pictures, just ask all of these important questions. Don't believe what people are saying, really see it yourself. I think that's important. Also, one important thing when you go on site, or you know that, for example, this location is using Storeganise and Sensorberg or any other software or any other access control system, read the reviews online, check the Google reviews, how people are experiencing the customer journey, because in the end, they're your customers and it's very important that they're happy. So I think that's very important. Ask as well for demo access. I think that's a major thing. That's always what we offer as well. They get demo access. They can play around a little bit, see how it actually looks like. So yeah, test it. I think test it before you sign the deal.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting that some of the demos and some of the people that we speak to have actually, they've come to us because they've maybe found a booking, an online booking from a customer of ours. So they've almost already decided that, oh, as a customer, they've gone through a booking flow and gone, oh, I thought it was powered by Storeganise, and then they've come to my desk and we've had a demo. So that's kind of interesting that they've already done that sort of validation that they like the booking portal in that case. Yeah, what about you, Sebastian? What's your experience, or what advice would you give to operators that when they're at that stage of just trying to essentially check that all the features and functionality that they've got exists with what the software that we're about to choose?
Yeah, Laura is bringing all the good points. She said come on site and have a look at the system, right? Like with regards to the access system. I had the same in relation to partitioning systems in self-storage, where the builder, a good reputation, everything just was under a load of pressure, just because like the curse of success, right? They just had so many projects. They brought on new teams. The teams would really like, they were late. The installations weren't fine. They would really like cause huge damages, like 30K for one operator, just damage the floors, things like that. And then everything's set up and you're suddenly disappointed that it looks different in the catalog than it looks right, then the experience is for you on site. So it's always good to have that reference, to agree with the supplier that you want it to be like at the reference site you saw, right? Like Sensorberg can do that, and partitioning system suppliers can do the same. So references are important, that's one thing. Yeah, apart from that, the point is believing the hype. A different aspect of hype is, I don't know what's wrong, but as a consultant, I see different softwares, different access systems, and there are so many weird assumptions thrown around about other systems, right? Like they can't do this, or they do it this way, but it's bad. Like it technically doesn't even make sense, like these claims. And I think you've both been, like, Storeganise has had their share of that, right? That wild claims made in Sensorberg as well. Both systems are perfectly fine, right? I've been working with either. Yes, I can just encourage to, make your first go back to the reasons why you're actually looking for it. Like don't go for the shiny AI feature or automation feature or whatnot. Like in the end, it should come back to the main goals you have, and then check against the products, then get your references, and find out what other users are saying, verify.
Yeah, and also define the customer journey. I think that's sometimes what people forget. How does the customer journey look like? And also because we sometimes experience that, for example, they have keypad access at the main door. How does the customer actually get the code during the booking process? How do they get the confirmation? Once they have downloaded the app, are they using just one app, two apps? These things, I think, are also very important to understand how it should look like for your customer segment.
Yeah, we actually have a question in, so that's great. It's a good question. So many operators hesitate to modernize, especially when their current systems seem to be working. Based on your experience, what are some hidden problems or risks they might be overlooking by sticking with the status quo?
It depends what system they're currently using. I would always go for security. I know security is a major thing. Especially in Germany, there are more and more break-ins, unfortunately. So security is a major thing. And for example, if you just have the outer shell digitalized, fine. But if you don't have the different units digitalized, then people can just store in their stuff. They have the padlocks. But if somebody is getting the access from the booking management platform, get the main access to the facility, they can easily just break in the storage units. So I think security is a major thing in self-storage, and it's becoming more and more important.
Yeah, as well, there are some systems out there that you need to be aware of the progress they're making, I guess, the updates. You know, if you're going to stick with the current system, you know, what signs are you receiving from that supplier that they're listening to you and that changes, improvements are being made, right? Because if the status quo is, you know, it's how we've always done things, then, you know, you could end up finding it a lot harder in the long run when you start to do a migration, because, you know, the worst case scenario is that you end up with an unsupported software, right, system. And that has happened. I know relatively recently in the US, there was an example of an operator that just had to shut down, right? And those customers had to very quickly find an alternative to pick them up, essentially.
Yeah. When we have people also that are quite hesitant of like changing the system, what we always recommend or offer them to just do it like step by step. So maybe start with like, I don't know, 20, 30 units first, digitalize or retrofit the 20, 30 units first, and then you can compare. I mean, in the end, if you have them digitalized, see how your customers actually, if they're more likely to book the full digitalized units or more the padlock option. So that's always what we offer as well, because then eventually you have you can compare it and you see the difference as well.
Which I guess brings us on to the fourth area that we can discuss today, which is around testing. Test, right? Once you've defined what's important to you, just test it out. And you know, like you mentioned, Seb, you know, we offer these free trial accounts that we actually encourage operators, even after they've signed up to our software, to keep the test account live. Because, you know, the ramp up on a new system is going to be so much quicker, and there won't be any hidden concerns or gotchas, because you've got your sandbox, you've got your test environment to make all those mistakes potentially, or, you know, comparisons that you need to make.
Yeah. Other SaaS providers charge for sandboxes. You guys give them away for free.
Maybe we should be charging.
Yeah, that's an idea. No, it's really good. I'd say that the operators that had the best transition really used the trial systems extensively, and kept them later on to you know, to test changes in the system.
Testing is important. Run tests in the staging environment before moving to production. I think that's very important. Test also in different scenarios. I think that's important. So have you tested the access control? Have you tested the access control? What happens with late payments, for example? What happens with remote move-ins? Does it actually work on site on different devices as well, like phones, tablets, like kiosks, fobs? You have different things to test before you have the actual launch. So some of our customers do like a soft launch first to test all of these different things, inform the customers, very important. But for sure, test everything. It's all about testing. Because in the end, if it's not working, you have just unhappy customers.
And Laura, something you said to me the other day, which resonated, was about asking difficult questions. And I was sort of thinking about that as not just asking difficult questions of the suppliers that you're potentially reviewing or providers, but also internally, right? You know, ask difficult questions internally amongst your team to say, you know, because if you're using a software, there's different stakeholders with different roles: finance, facilities manager, CEO. You know, they're all going to be interacting and expecting different functionality from a system. So it's about making sure that all those stakeholders are asking those difficult questions as to, is this going to, you know, provide me with the answers that I need based on what, based on my role, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think here as well, don't always think technically, think more practically, I would say. How does it work in real life? Like, what happens after hours? What happens if you have a poor signal on site? I mean, these things you need to double check first before you go live. What happens if the site manager needs to overlock? So these are different questions, very critical questions you always need to ask yourself and the team.
Seb, when you're doing let's say you're reviewing softwares and options for different operators, are you testing for them with them, like in a live environment, or are you building certain custom functionality if they need it, and then you allow them to test that? How does that work?
Different in every project, of course. The testing, that's very general. How do we approach testing? Well, before we start any testing, it's moving over the data, at least in a test form, right? Like, before you can run any test, the process, you need to set up your system correctly. That's one thing. For in Storeganise, you have to get the settings right and understand, like, you know, it might have worked differently in the system that you had, and you have to rethink how things work in the new system. That's the one thing. So you're setting up the machine, and then the next thing is the data that goes through that machine. You might take a subset of the data you have, maybe anonymize the data if you choose to, and put it in that system, right? Maybe you want to change email addresses of your tenants and then play with real data, but not, you know, send emails to them during your tests. And then you go through your test plan, which would basically, you know, the move-ins, the move-outs, the transfers, and all the corner cases, the exports for your accounting, how do I overlock a customer? How do I unoverlock them? And all these things, right? So a good test plan can be quite long, maybe not as long as the list you mentioned with 1,400 points. But yeah, that would be the general setup.
It makes me think we should be having like a testing checklist, right? So you could basically...
We have such a thing, actually. We have such a thing, and what we always also hand out is like let's call it testing kit.
Okay.
For the installation party on site, so they can really check and test every single lock if it's like properly installed, because that's super important that everything in the end runs smoothly.
Great.
Yeah.
And because so the last four areas that we've discussed from an operating software perspective, we're looking at almost pre-purchase, right? So you've got your why, you've planned, you've kind of you've demystified any potential myths that you might have heard around there, and then you've done some proper testing. Then it's time to sign up and, you know, and move on. That's for the operating perspective, operating software. But from a access control, it's slightly different, right? The sign up process is at a different stage. Am I right?
It is. So it, of course, always depends. And as I said, it's important to bring in access control right from the beginning, because then we can also coordinate with the partitioning services. So usually for access control, unfortunately, it comes very much in the end. But of course, it depends. So usually how it works, we talk to customers, and once they have signed with a software company, once they have signed with a box builder or partitioning services, we eventually get the floor plan, and inside the floor plan, we allocate the hardware. And once this is done, they only sign. It is quite a pity, because it would be better if they can sign, of course, right from the start, because then we can coordinate with different stakeholders. But yeah, sometimes it is what it is.
Yeah. So assuming then that you have a new customer, and you're an operator, and you've decided on your payment, access, operational software, all the other pieces, it's time to then sign up and get going, which brings us to the kind of the fifth and final, arguably one of the most important pieces to this when you're actually ready to go live, is the project management piece.
The coordination also super important. Sometimes I have the feeling people believe something is not working because of bad technology, but in the end, it's just bad communication, unfortunately. People don't talk to each other. I mean, that's also what I said in the beginning. And access control sits right in the middle of everything. So you have internal different people involved. You need to coordinate. You have to have an owner. I mean, we said that already, ownership, timing, very important, but you have to internally coordinate everything. So for example, IT handles the system integration. You have operations that actually handles the daily business. You have different stakeholders who supply the hardware, the boxes, the infrastructure, IT network, these different things. So it's important you have a proper coordination ongoing. And also within the team, what I sometimes miss is people don't see the full picture of it. So I think that's very, very important. We once had an example where IT sets up everything, but they just forgot to explain different ones that are involved or explain the access group setup. And in the end, the operation team were just sitting there and they don't know what to do, or they didn't know what to do. So my advice, over communicate right from the start. That's also what we're doing without our team. So have kickoff meetings, have like bi-weekly meetings if that's needed, or like quarterly check-in meetings, how things are going, any challenges, what are the next steps, set up milestones, set up tasks. I think these things are very important when it comes to coordination.
Another aspect of coordination I'm seeing is communication with clients, right? With tenants, the tenant communication of a switch that is coming. Like in one case I've seen that's a bit specific to Germany, but if you, I've had an operator switch to Stripe, and they screwed up and got a lifetime ban from Stripe. I didn't help them with that part. They did it on their own, and we tried to fix it later on, right? But there's so many things. And why did this happen? Tenants did not know, like when you get on Stripe, suddenly the bank account that charges you has changed, right? And suddenly a lot of the tenants were surprised that somebody else is taking their money, right? It's a different bank, it's on a different day. So they complained at the bank, and these complaints moved back right to Stripe, and Stripe suddenly collected a lot of complaints for the same new account. It looks like fraud, right? So what did they do? You know, it's all algorithms and machines, so you don't get anyone to talk there. It's just you get blocked without appeal, and that's it. Now they have a lifetime ban for Stripe. So what I typically do in these migration projects is also pay attention to tenant communication, right? Like tell the tenant that you will migrate, and then tell them again, and then tell them that you've just migrated. Just make sure that they are aware. It could also be things like, hey, by the way, your PIN might change from 4 to 5 digits, or in the future you're using an app.
Yeah. Yep. I'm just going to break out to a quick question that I've just received as well on the Q&A, another really good one. So what do you recommend when the software workflows don't match the company's internal processes or comply with local government requirements? Do you adapt the system, the process, or look for workarounds?
Leave the country.
Great question. Great question.
Great one, yeah.
So I mean, from my perspective, I think that looking back to this plan and defining the why, you're going to, within that process, you often can categorize some of the functionality and some of the dependencies on whether it's a process that you've got internally, a process that you've got externally with you know, an e-invoicing system that there are some functionality that just are must-have, and some are nice to have, and some are, you know, just kind of bonus features and functionality. So I think the categorization of those will help you at least get a percentage as an overall as to what a new software is going to allow you to do. Then the rest you can start to kind of you can discuss internally and say, you know, is this process is it a nice to have? Can it be moved from a must have to a nice to have?
Yeah.
And how are others doing it? If you look at I think it's really interesting to look and see globally. You know, there was a talk at the Japan show recently where I can't remember the name of the talker, but he was speaking about deposits and kind of almost demystifying the myth that you even need deposits, because the amount of effort that you can that you can save so much money and effort internally by just scrapping them all together. Obviously, that's quite a controversial move from the beginning, but then once you actually look at it, that it streamlined the processes hugely. So I think it's about being quite aggressive with your conversations internally to see how are others doing it. You know, is it just a must-have, and then that will help you kind of at least whittle down the providers based on what they've got out of the box.
Yeah, excellent point. Right. Identifying the right like must-haves and need-to-haves, and then but you end up with certain must-haves, right, if they're legally required, and then it's important to be able to tweak the system to add on the things that you need. I would say Storeganise. I'm a software developer, so I like, you know, all this customization, APIs, and being able to adapt processes. One example is the booking journey. Like it's more and more common to have these booking journeys where customers select a unit, enter the credit card. In certain markets or from a certain size of operator, you might want to have more control over the booking process, right? You want more marketing tweaks, upsales, get out the inventory that isn't selling. With Storeganise, you have the option to build your own booking portal. Clearly, that's nothing you want to do if you just have one site or two sites, but larger operators with 8, 9, 10 plus sites, for them, it absolutely makes sense. You know, if I could make 3 to 5% more revenue because I had a better booking journey, should I do it? And they end up doing it, adapting the process and getting it closer to what they need. And this can also then include complying with legal necessities. Like in the Nordics, there's bank ID that you might want to use to identify a user, or it could be specific credit checks or payment methods that you can integrate in the journey. If it's not the booking journey, then there are a lot of other events in the system. Someone moves in, someone moves out, where you might want to hook something into the process, right? Like if somebody moved out, send a message to my work order application. Maintenance is great to create a work order for your team. And I think if you use this flexibility, Storeganise has it. Very few things are left that can't be done, right? That's what I find typically.
And if not, there's always Zapier, right? The emergence of the middleware opportunities there. If you are through the open API, they're not just workarounds inside the system, but also looking at external kind of low-code tools as well to help you, just essentially flex the customization that you can do and find those workarounds. I was going to ask about so in terms of project management, what do you know? Do you have any actual tools? Like, do you use any project management tools that you can recommend internally for others to use potentially? When someone signs up, Laura, do you have a dedicated project manager that works with that person? What does that look like?
Yeah, so once somebody's signing with us, we always have one dedicated person who coordinates everything internally, but also externally with different people involved. So within the team, but also different partitioning services, software, and so on and so on. So how we currently do it, we work with an ERP CRM system. And in this tool, which is called Udo, by the way, I think it's from Belgium. But this tool actually also has like a project management tool included in that. So with that, you can set up different milestones, tasks. You can assign also tasks to different people internally. I think that's also important. So yeah, I can recommend that. But this is not only a project management tool. Basically, it's just included in our ERP and CRM system. This is our database, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I've heard success from joining Slack, getting those businesses to have a Slack community, so you can all be sort of chatting in real time, specifically through those initial phases of migration and project management. And I just wanted to add as well something which this from my previous company. One thing that the last thing that you want to do, I think, when you've decided on a new technology, is to push a new technology or a new system onto your staff and just kind of say, this is now going to be our new system, and because I think that there are that could lead to complications and a lack of buy-in by certain influencers in your organization, resistance to that change. So I think to try and think about how you can mitigate that risk at an earlier stage, even being transparent about the testing maybe phase that you're going through, because you want to be getting feedback from everyone in your organization as to how they're using the system now, so that they can help with that process early on.
Yeah, what we, for example, always offer is like onboarding, a free onboarding. That means that before they go live, we have like a online or on-site. We also offer, depending where they're located are, but we always offer it, of course, to come on site as well, to really have an onboarding, how to use the system, how the old system looks like, how our system looks like now, what do you need to do? Because also in our dashboard, you have different roles. So we have an admin role, you have an operator role, so different roles, meaning different responsibilities, of course. So that's always what we do as well, because it's important for the people on site to know how the system works.
Yeah. Sebastian, have you ever been invited into an organization to explain to their staff that because one thing that we noticed being in a consultancy before this was that actually people get quite nervous when there's an external consultant coming in, because they think their jobs are at risk, and so they'll so it's about trying to again demystify a little bit, or put everyone's mind at ease to say, look, we're here to help. We want everyone to just improve their processes and for the company to grow. Is that something that you've done, and if not, would you consider doing that for operators?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the invitation to come on site. Generally with my project is they can be everywhere. Really, like either a lot of projects in self-storage are a small one. That's just the case, right? It might be just one site, 100 units. It doesn't pay off to have to fly in Sebastian just to shake his hand. So what I do is generally all the time, I do it remotely, exclusively. And what has helped here is, sure, we do calls, and I'm available on. I try to use like low friction communication channels, like WhatsApp is very casual. That works great. Another thing I'm doing is you guys might know this tool which is called Loom, where you can record your screen, and then in the corner you have a small video, and then you just have Sebastian talking about something in the application, how it works, and you see him clicking through it, and then I put it in a folder, and that like creates a knowledge base. So that's one thing I'm doing, and that's generally very well received.
That's great. I really like that, because I think lots of people, we use Loom internally, and we try to avoid waiting for a meeting at a certain time to discuss a certain topic. Whereas if you could do a 4 or 5 minute Loom, then people can consume that in their own time, asynchronized. And I think more operators could be aware of some of these tools to help them. I think that'll be very useful.
Very interesting as well, because from an access point perspective, people don't like these recordings.
Okay.
They like it practical. They want to either just also communicate on WhatsApp or have a call, or like a video. You need to actually set up meetings with them. Other than that, they're not showing up, or you need to go on site. They're very practical. So I guess these recordings.
I guess from a hardware perspective as well, they actually need a more touch and feel. That we're coming to the end of the hour, but it's been any other sort of tips and pointers and mistakes you've come across that you might want to share before we close out the session?
I think we covered mostly everything. That was fun. Maybe we should do another session next month.
Well, Well, funny you say that. I think that some of these areas that we've spoken about, they almost could warrant
Be like their own topic.
their own topic,
and
you know,
focus.
and really go a bit deeper into them and focus on them in a little bit more detail
Yeah.
to help uncover some more gems for our operators that are watching. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for joining me, Sebastian and Laura. I really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone that joined the webinar today. And yeah, check out the webinar series that we're going to be doing at Storeganise, because we're ramping this up, and we're going to be looking at migration, looking at payments, looking at access control, all types of different topics to cover in the future. So thank you very much for joining. Hope to see you again next time.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. It was fun.
Good to be
Bye,
here.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.